Welcome to War Room Impeachment, live from the Breitbart Embassy. It is the evening show, one of the specials we do on days of big testimony or days of breaking news. It's 19 November, year of our Lord 2019. This is episode 37. Have Raheem Kassam, Nigel Farage's wingman and the head of his communications strategy during the entire rise of the populist nationalist movement in the United Kingdom that ultimately led to Brexit and on December 12th of this year of a new election. Also, Jason Miller. Jason, a long-term guy in the campaign world of grassroots candidates, conservative candidates, worked with Ted Cruz in his presidential run, eventually was the communication strategist, senior communication strategist on the Trump 2016 victory campaign, the greatest comeback in American political history, and also the transition communication director. And we're honored to be joined by Greg Manns, and Greg is one of the individuals that also off the 2016 campaign that is manning the war room. And you're in a war room today. We got the folks right next door to us. They're doing rapid response all day. A wild day of testimony here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on the Salem Radio Broadcast Network, and on America's Voice.news, and throughout the country on other stations that we'll get to tomorrow in our podcast. And Raheem's, what's our the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher? Where
I don't know what that is, but apparently we're on
Spotify. My dad's on Spotify.
Spotify,
Google Play. A lot of people still have Google running devices. SoundCloud as well, if you want to listen to it on your laptop.
So subscribe for free and leave a review.
Yeah, absolutely. We're growing in number by the day. I mean, every day I check the numbers per show, and we go up by 50, 60 reviews per time, which, not everyone leaves a review. So we're getting thousands and thousands of new people every day, and tens of thousands of listeners. We've had a phenomenal number of downloads on the podcast in a short 3 weeks.
And you can go to warroom.org, get all the information. You've got. This is not a pro-Trump website. It's to give you even-handed accounts, but we do make sure that people understand the details and the substance, which President Trump has kept saying, hey, just look at the substance, go to the granularity. And here we try to give you the high and the low. We try to give you the big picture and also the details. And I want to get into immediately today's, before we go to the morning session of the testimony, Raheem, I think we have some breaking news, right?
Unfortunately. We have some breaking news. Ambassador Volker and Tim Morrison, formerly of the NSC, are both still sitting on Capitol Hill giving their public testimonies. These are two of the witnesses that the Republican side actually called to testify that were left out of the Democrats' original public hearing schedule. And in the last few moments, we've had two not so great, as far as I can read them, stories coming out.
Well, we know they're not great because CNN put them up as the lead, so you can assume it's not. You assume it's not pro President Trump.
When you have two separate leads going up within sort of 5 minutes of each other, and they're quickly changed out, and they're on CNN. They're not necessarily
CNN running a war room too. They have a war room over there, Jason.
CNN is a war room.
Although I want to make one point about this, and again, I'm not trying to put a focus on the silver lining.
Right.
I mean, we definitely have a cloud that we're dealing with here, but the fact that they're going with Volker now for their headline and not Vindman from this morning, I think is pretty telling.
Okay, good. Why?
I think in particular the exchange between when Nunes was asking Vindman to tell him about who all he discussed the July 25th call with, and then Schiff jumped in and Vindman's counsel jumped in. And there was quite a kind of big knockdown drag.
We're going to get into that because that's the most explosive.
We're going to get way into that.
And you're saying that if CNN doesn't have that as a lead and is going to something with Volker, that shows you that the Vindman stuff is not going to be that.
I think that look, if the headline is essentially mixed or it's not something negative on President Trump, anything today that's not a headline of man in uniform says that Trump is bad. Anything other than that, I think is a better place than I would have thought we'd be.
You disagree, Raheem, and why?
Oh, I think you're so wrong about that, Jason. Okay. Look, you've got Republican called
He is a comms director. He is a comms. Yeah, he's pivoting. It was a pivot. That was a pivot.
And I'll be the interviewer, okay? Right. You had the Republican called witnesses today. These were the guys up here right now that were supposed to bail the president out in some way. And you had two headlines in quick succession. Number one, Volker admitting he was wrong to view Biden and Burisma separately as separate things. He now is saying that they were the same thing. The investigations into Burisma were not separate from any purported investigation into Biden. He also went in there and said that there was no mention, when he gave his original testimony, he said there was no mention of the investigations in a White House meeting over the summer. He's now saying there were mentions of that. And the second one is the big one is Morrison, who just moments ago said that the Ambassador Sondland told him about Ambassador Sondland's meetings, private meeting with Andrei Yermak, the Ukrainian presidential advisor. We discussed this on the show a couple of days ago about this private meeting that they were in together, and apparently Sondland told Morrison, quote, this is Morrison saying this, that the Ukrainians would have to have the prosecutor general make a statement with respect to the investigations as a condition of having the aid lifted.
Yeah, but I want to go in here a minute. Look, if we're talking about Sondland, and Sondland's, we're going to get more into him later. He's going to get chopped apart tomorrow if he even shows up. Again, we're still at this point where nobody yet has said that there's any quid pro quo or bribery or extortion or any kind of smoking gun going to President Trump.
Correct.
That he did anything wrong. By the time we get to tomorrow, it is going to be, this whole town is going to be on fire on Gordon Sondland. Is he showing up? What is he saying?
Is he taking the fifth?
Is he taking the fifth?
Does he have an immunity
look,
deal?
I would much rather have a bunch of no-name bureaucrats, and maybe they said something, maybe they slightly contradict each other, rather than here's a picture of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman saying Trump bad. If it's bureaucrats saying stuff on the news tonight, and you have everyone kind of talking over each other, that's a win for us.
Here's what I think is the concern, is that what they're saying now, what Morrison and Volker are saying now in front of the nation. Remember, most people are just coming to the story right now.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some polling later. And it looks like the polling may actually be going in the president's favor as more people see this. Now you've had people in, Jordan and Nunez. These are serious people that sat there, Meadows. They went through the audition down in the Star Chamber. We selected these guys. Mm-hmm. And what's surprising is that their testimony today in front of the nation is quite different than what they gave in the Star Chamber, and particularly it's different in every time it looks like it's different.
Yes.
It's different not in support of what their testimony was, which was exculpatory to the president.
Now, I will say this in Jason's defense.
Okay.
That is the same issue that the Democrat witnesses are having, is that things are changing, timelines aren't necessarily matching up.
And you think it's better for the president.
But here's, when Vindman went up today, I was nervous, but actually he came out, and I don't think Vindman landed really anything. He landed some emotional blows when he appealed to, his father coming over here and
let's
that
go
kind
to
of thing.
Vindman. Greg, you're going to keep your eye on it. Anything breaks on this thing. Let's go to Vindman, and let's go to the morning session, and let's talk about Vindman. Let's talk about Vindman's strengths. Let's talk about his weaknesses and where you think he got blown up.
Well, as I say, I think the only thing that really landed a blow was him talking about how he didn't have to fear for his life. When he was addressing his father in his opening statement today, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman basically said, "Dad, I'll be okay."
I thought that was. I thought for what he was trying to accomplish, it was powerful. He put him in the uniform, and then he talks about coming from Russia.
It'll play very well in the Acela corridor, but actually out in the country, people are looking for substance, and you can see that borne out in the morning consult.
You don't think that's
Politico
substance?
polling. I don't believe that's substance in the slightest. In fact, what Vindman said today was basically a couple of things as far as stuck out for me. He said,
Did he lie?
one,
Did he lie today?
Well,
did he perjure himself?
I'm not going to cast aspersions on a.
Well, let's give the difference.
Purple Heart Award.
Okay, fine. Let's give the differences in his testimony. You want to play it?
Yeah. Well, fine. Let's start with where I think he started to go shaky, which was
This is Colonel Vindman.
This is Colonel Vindman on the chain of command.
I understand and appreciate the importance of chain of command. In your deposition, you emphasized the importance of chain of command. You were a direct report to Dr. Fiona Hill and then Mr. Tim Morrison, and they were your seniors, correct?
That is correct.
When you had concerns about the 725 call between the two presidents, you didn't go to Mr. Morrison about that, did you?
I immediately went to John Eisenberg, the lead legal counsel.
So that doesn't seem like change of command. So in the deposition with Mr. Morrison, page 58 to 60.
Congressman,
Excuse me, please allow Colonel Vindman to answer.
Yeah. So I reported it to John Eisenberg. I attempted to report it to Mr. Morrison.
Okay, thank you.
He didn't avail himself, and at that point, I was told not to speak
Well,
to
he did
anybody else
avail
by Jeff
himself, and I'll get into that.
So
that was Congressman Stewart from Utah.
That was Wenstrup.
That was Wenstrup. Okay, fine.
That was where where Vindman first started to get rattled, and you could see going in that he wasn't very assured of himself.
We said about that earlier. Meadows had said the body language
Yeah.
is a lot different than the testimony.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, and I think there's one thing you guys got to keep in mind, and learn this early in campaign politics, is that you always have to remember that your opponents have problems too. They thought Alexander Vindman was going to be their hero today.
Yes.
That's why they booked him in the morning, along with Jennifer Williams, the new Jay Will, and they thought that was going to drive the narrative the entire day. But Vindman's already bumped off of the headlines. I think what stood out, and I forget who it was who absolutely deconstructed who Vindman reported to, and maybe as part of it was in that clip, but Vindman came across as a mid-management nobody. He's met Zelensky, he's never met Trump, and he was supposed, this is the difference between the written testimony and the still pictures of a man in uniform, and getting up there and crumbling. His body language was weird. He was all over the place. And again, and Raheem, this might be the next clip that you're going to, but the back and forth where he refused to say who he had discussed the July 25th call with, and the fact that Schiff jumped in and his counsel jumped in. They are hiding something. This is going to be the thing that drives all conservative news. Anyone who's a Trump supporter needs to key in on this and say, and then Vindman says he doesn't know the whistleblower. Guys, what are they hiding?
Okay, let's go to this, because this is my question. Did he perjure himself in this? Is this where he took instructions from somebody? You want to roll that, Raheem?
Let's find out.
Mr. Vindman, you testified in your deposition that you did not know the whistleblower.
Ranking member, it's Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, please.
Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, you testified in the deposition that you did not know who the whistleblower was or is.
I do not know who the whistleblower is. That is
So how
correct.
is it possible for you to name these people and then out the whistleblower?
Per the advice of my counsel, I've been advised not to answer specific questions about members of the intelligence community.
Are you aware that this is the Intelligence Committee that's conducting an impeachment hearing?
Of course I am.
Wouldn't the appropriate place for you to come to testify would be the Intelligence Committee about someone within the intelligence community?
Ranking member, per the advice of my counsel and the instructions from the chairman,
He's taking the fifth.
I've been advised not to provide any specifics on who I've spoken to inside the intelligence community.
So let's be clear about what just happened there. There are two things that really stand out there. Number one, what Devin Nunes has done in that small, less than a minute, I guess it was, is identify that Vindman goes in originally, remember, and he says, I don't know who the whistleblower is. That was in his private opening statement. They're now saying you're not allowed to talk about this one particular individual. I have been instructed, he says, by counsel and by the chairman, Schiff, who also says he doesn't know the whistleblower, not to talk about this one individual. Well, if you can't talk about that one individual, then that one individual is your guy. And the second part of that is that he says he's been instructed by the chairman. It comes down to what we were saying about witness tampering.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and that's the whole thing. This was the real star witness. I mean, yes, they had the folks last week with Taylor and Kent, and famously call them out. But I mean, this is literally the man in uniform. This is the man of the hour, and he came up and he completely fell apart. He's a mid-management nobody. Hasn't even met Trump. And then here, the central point of getting to the whistleblower. Why can't we have the whistleblower come in and testify? Why can't we have whoever the whistleblower spoke with in putting together his report come in and testify? Why can't we get Hunter Biden? Why can't we get Joe Biden? I mean, this all comes down to who this whole cabal.
You listen to the War Room Impeachment on the John Frederick Radio Network, on Salem Radio, and also America's Voice.News. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, Greg Mann, Stephen K. Bannon. Ari Melver and Nicole Wallace all afternoon while this is going on, saying that Vindman gave you laid it out on the case for bribery. What say you?
I don't think so at all. I mean, Vindman's somebody who literally has never spoken with President Trump, has never met with him. Everything today, even there might be a couple of bumpy headlines coming out of Volcker. I'm not trying to gloss over that. There's nothing that gets the Democrats closer to extortion, bribery, obstruction, quid pro quo, any of these. There's nothing tying President Trump to any of these things where he has done anything wrong.
Do you think he got blown up on chain of command?
Yeah,
and they kept hammering him about why didn't you use the chain of command? Why'd you go to the legal counsel right away? And the answer was so garbled.
Yeah.
Right, it was not clear
Yeah.
why he did it. You know, as he comes in, and you can't disparage his service, you can't disparage his patriotism. He's wearing the uniform. He's got the the Purple Heart. And he should be called Lieutenant Colonel, not Mr. Vindman. But when he starts answering these questions on the chain of command, which every Army officer should know, it gets very fuzzy.
Yeah, he also expressed, I agree with Jason, he also expressed far more in terms of opinion as to how he read the call rather than what actually was in the mind of either of these two individuals, President Zelensky or President Trump. But what's really interesting, another clip we have to play here, was when he was confronted about the fact that he actually, Vindman, had the ability to suggest changes to this White House call transcript. It's a very important detail.
Let's go to it.
When he was asked to submit changes to his senior, Tim Morrison, and Tim Morrison accepted all his changes, there was one big change that he claims now, but that wasn't in his original thing. I'm going to play this clip for you guys.
Mr. Morrison was skipped in your chain of command about your other concerns. So Mr. Morrison said he's the final clearing authority. He said he saw your edits. Do you remember if all of the edits were incorporated? And he said, yes, I accepted all of them. That's on page 6162. So he believes all your edits were accepted. Let me ask you, were in your edits, did you insist that the word demand be put into the transcription between the conversation of the two presidents?
I did not.
But you did say that in your opening statement today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Big moment from Wenstrup again.
What Wenstrup is on today? What do you mean by that? Why was that a big moment?
It's a big moment because remember, this person had the ability to influence what the official record reflected.
Right.
And at the time he was part of creating the official record, he did not suggest that President Trump demanded anything of President Zelensky.
Right.
But he did use that language this morning.
Right.
So Wenstrup is showing it doesn't add up. If you had, as he said, I did not hesitate back then knowing that something was wrong here, you would surely have said, hey, we got to include the demand. There was no demand.
One thing I think hurt him, I made a note when I read the original transcript at the end of the day, because it was more powerful seeing it visually, and that's what these hearings are for, that we got to go back on the site and have Greg or Jack or one of the team. When they went back to his original transcript in the Star Chamber, and he starts about how he was in charge of the Ukraine policy,
yes,
how he was the guy that was the thing, and how the National Security Council had the policy and not the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
I think it was Radcliffe did that. It was masterful, and I think it shows one of the problems here. The problem is you have these unelected bureaucrats, no matter their patriotism and what they think is right, they've got a mindset, they got clientism about these countries. I'm not saying he's Ukrainian or from Russia. I'm saying all of them have that issue. And they sit there, and when you read that testimony and it's read back to him, and he's sitting there, and I think it was Radcliffe, you see what the problem is. These people think they know more than the democratically elected commander-in-chief.
This is what Ron Johnson said of it as well in his letters that came out yesterday. He said, you often hear the words stated policy, long-established policy, established policy, as if the policy-making process...
The U.S.'s policy.
The U.S.
separate.
U.S. national security policy, as if the president is subordinate to that.
This has been the Morning Joe problem. This is why they cheered when McMaster's was hired. This is the Morning Joe problem the president's had every day, and this is going to be something that's going to be, I think, is going to take a lot more drill down on. But I think this is what this thing's going to get to be. And you see that the president's got and he's got his own house style, right? He's not a diplomat. He's never says he's a diplomat. He's got his own house style, but that's what this comes down with. What else? But is all of that Vindman wasn't that strong in the morning? Is that offset by Volker? And here's what concerns me. Were these guys additionally vetted or talked to or thought through? It's not witness prep, but you do go through and hear what your guys are going to say. These have to be surprises for the Republicans out there. That's different in the testimony. How can that happen? You and I, our heads would be banging on the wall if we were actually running this, saying this is an unforced error, right? You had the Star Chamber transcript, which was solid, but now you've got something here that was unexpected.
Yeah, I think it's an own goal. There's no doubt about it. Now there are parts coming out from the Volker and Morrison testimonies that help ameliorate some of the concerns about bribery or quid pro quo or anything like that. But of course, the CNNs of the world are not going to lead with that, and you don't really expect any of the news networks to read into those things. But
conservative media does have to pull those nuggets out and then amplify them.
Good luck.
Correct? Well, I'm saying I know there's some lack of interest in this entire thing, but that's my point. You can think it's a witch hunt, but hey, that train, they're hurtling down the track. Somebody's going to have to do this.
But to the aspect of what we've discussed on the war of attrition, what are our folks going to look to and what they're going to see? People who ultimately view this as being an unfair vehicle. I think there was a powerful moment towards the end, Steve, when, and I forget who it was that said it, but they asked of both Vindman and of Williams, why did one of you report this to the general counsel and why did the other not? And literally,
Very powerful.
the looks on their faces was like they found out Santa wasn't
Go,
real.
go back and set that up. That's when they played. I think it was Radcliffe again. He played what they had said, and he had Williams sitting on one side, and he had Vindman on the other, and they had both come to two separate conclusions, listening to the same thing at the same time.
And that's a moment that I don't know if it's going to get the justice that it deserves on the the Hannitys and the
Well,
Fox.
it won't definitely get it on the CNNs.
No, but it was such a powerful moment, in my opinion, that you had these two folks with all the evidence, their perceived evidence in front of them as they go through it, and they came to such different conclusions. I think it really made Vindman, this kind of goes to Raheem's point earlier, going back to the Ron Johnson letter, Vindman looked like he was out on an island today.
And we just got a minute left. We're going to come back. There's polling. We're going to get into the polling, and this polling is a much more thorough poll than the ABC one has done. You notice it's not being hawked like the ABC one, which was everywhere. It was on 10 different sites as soon as it was out. We're going to get to the Politico Morning Consult poll. But when you talk about independence, Jason, how does the White House, how does the RNC, how does the campaign try to reach those independents who more or less will probably be the type of people who go to MSNBC or CNN more than they would naturally go to Fox or some of the conservative sites? How do you try to get there with these nuggets that are coming out?
They're going to have to go with paid media. They're going to have to go.
You're
to
saying
TV
30-second spots. You're going to have to go out there and just do it.
And we'll play it in the next half. But the president's campaign does have a new TV ad today,
Yes.
calling it a charade, and they have to go and remind people it's a waste of time. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. Those are predominantly the things that stand out.
Okay, this is a special edition of War Room Impeachment from the Breitbart Embassy Live. It's episode 37. Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon, and also Greg Mans, who joined us actually from the bowels of the war room, the engine room. We're going to return when we come back. More of the breaking stories on testimony that's going on this afternoon with Ambassador Volker, right? And Tim Morrison, who's on the National Security Council. We're going to take a short commercial break on the John Fredericks Radio Network and also in America's Voice.news and Salem Broadcasting. We will be back in a moment.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Breitbart Embassy live down the base. We've got a war room spread out throughout all the different rooms. And here we do a broadcast. Raheem Kassam from the United Kingdom and Jason Miller from the Trump campaign, joined by Greg Mans, one of the folks from the campaign in 16 that are working with us here in the war room. Okay, we got additional testimony, Raheem, we're going to go into, and then I want to go into some of this polling and see how things are shifting and talk about how the RNC and the campaign and the White House and others are starting to fight back on this and starting to get out with paid media. What do you got, Raheem?
Well, before we do that, can I just pull in a
Sure.
clip randomly? Don't worry, producer Dan, it's not the one we were talking about. I want to play this audio from CNN this afternoon, which kind of goes to what we've been saying about how Nancy Pelosi has had to shift the narrative. Let's just hear that.
The word bribery. And that was a political shift. We all heard Nancy Pelosi do it in her press conference last week. It was blatantly obvious that she used the word bribery intentionally because it packs more of a punch. It is more understandable for people because her goal is to penetrate public opinion. It has been. She's very open about that. And quid pro quo doesn't cut it. And that is a political aim. And, it is what it is. I mean, that is their goal.
And to your question,
Is that Dana Bash?
It's Dana Bash.
Yeah. So that lays it out right there.
Today, talking about what we identified, I think, over a week ago here on War Room Impeachment, that quid pro quo wasn't cutting it as
Too
a narrative,
complicated.
and they've shifted on to bribery.
I also think it locks into it solves another problem, Jason Miller, because it locks into it hardwires you right into the Constitution. Bribery is right there. It's not high crimes and misdemeanors, which is fairly nebulous, right? It locks you right into this so they can anchor into the Constitution and then try to prove their case.
Well, we've gone through this with Tom Fitton. We've gone through this with David Rivkin. I mean, two folks who are very smart lawyers who really understand this stuff inside and out. And both of them say all the way across the board, this is all junk. Democrats do not have a legal case here. They have rhetoric, and they're doing a great job with the rhetoric and manipulating the media. They do not have a legal case for impeaching the president.
Are we able to get the clips? We just heard from the war room himself, from the guys in the war room, that actually they asked point blank about bribery here momentarily. Do we have that?
I'm going to play this for you from Ratcliffe today.
Okay.
A number of times witnesses have used the word bribery or bribe to describe President Trump's conduct in the last 6 weeks of this inquiry is zero. In fact, in these 3,500 pages of sworn deposition testimony and just these 10 transcripts released thus far, the word bribery appears in these 3,500 pages exactly one time. And ironically, it appears not in a description of President Trump's alleged conduct. It appears in a description of Vice President Biden's alleged conduct.
Kaboom!
This is important because as early as next week, my Democratic colleagues are going to say, we need to vote on the evidence from this impeachment inquiry, on the impeachment of the president for bribery. And they're going to send a report to the Judiciary Committee, and because there's more Democrats than Republicans, it's going to likely pass. And when that happens, the American people need to be clear that when the Democrats, what they are describing as bribery, not a single witness is describing as bribery.
It's very powerful. By the way, you do a pretty good job on clips for him. I think there's a future for you in this business.
Yeah, well, yeah, something to fall back on.
So
Producer
what, is,
Dan,
so,
can I
what,
work for you?
so what does that tell us? The whole Star Chamber audition, it shows you how fast they were moving, and how, in hindsight, if they'd done that, they would ask bribery 1,000 times, right? It would have been in every deposition.
Because they can't
but they're
help
making
themselves.
it up as they go along.
Right, because first they thought quid pro quo. But guess what? Nobody understands
Too
what quid
complicated.
pro quo is. So then they bounce around. We got, like I said, we have the bribery, we have the extortion, we have the obstruction, we have remember when witness intimidation was a thing? And that was the thing for about 6-8 hours, something like that.
No traction.
They
If it doesn't
keep-
get traction, they move on.
No, because and this is why, and this is a perfect segue into the polling.
Yes,
that
talk
Review's
about
gonna go
traction.
into. But let's talk about the traction. How independents are tired of the drama here.
Well, first of all, tell us, you got some interesting stuff on actually where independents get their information, their source of information. I think is quite amazing, because it looked like I maybe, gave too high a thing to Jason's former employer, CNN.
Mark Meadows would be proud of me again. I'm probably the only person in town who's gone through this entire... Well, with Greg, Mann's here, and don't be shy to speak up, Greg, if you have anything to say on this as well. There is about 290-odd pages of polling that came out from
But that's pretty
Politico
good.
Morning Consult today.
And unlike ABC yesterday, we actually have the crosstab, so you can actually verify the veracity and accuracy of this.
We have too many crosstabs, if anything, but it's, as far as political nerds like us are concerned, this is incredible grist to our mill. Gives us something to do all day. Firstly and foremostly, we got to look at it. I want to look into something that you said before the break, Steve, which is that the people,
How do you get to independence?
the people who we're trying to reach, or that President Trump is trying to reach on the messaging, are not necessarily watching Fox News. Well, that's actually not entirely true. The numbers, if I can find them somewhere here, the numbers show us that people are watching. Here they are. Independents, right? 6% of independents say they watch CNN. 5% of independents say they watch MSNBC. And 6% of independents say they watch public television. So that's about 17% all in all, right? 22% of independents say they get their news from Fox News.
Wow.
And 31% of independents say they watch network news, NBC, ABC, CBS, and the rest are either others or don't knows. So that
So
actually tells
over
you-
50% are either Fox or the broadcast networks.
Yeah. Now the number drops substantially when
That
you
also
take
shows
independent women versus
that also
independent
shows you
men.
during, it's been bad for years, but during Trump, they're so hardcore left. It's a Democratic audience.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times it's not even good product. I mean, when you hear literally, it's this person really, really, really hates Trump. This person hates Trump. This person kind of hates Trump. That's not good TV, and that's not a good panel. And people, where they maybe have looked to certain channels to be the true down the middle, now they look and say, you know what? I don't want to hear these guys just bash them. Give me something that's at least somewhat
Yep.
down the middle. And look, this is a reason. There's a whole other conversation. Fox looks at the new dynamic as if they own the middle and everything to the right. That's where you've seen a little bit of the shift in Fox.
Yeah.
But
they
it's
don't
true.
think it's not as obviously conservative as it used to be. They've gone to the middle, and that's a business strategy, thinking that all these other great networks are small or starting to be emerging growth, but they've got this dominant position And so they'll just come to the center. It looks like it's paying off. I mean, you got 22% of the independents saying they're getting the news from Fox.
Yeah, and I'm going to claim that I suspected that would be the case. I was like you. I thought that it would be much more of a fair shake for CNN and MSNBC, but it's just simply not. Now, this Morning Consult poll, the big pullout from it is obviously the shift in the number of independents who are supportive of the impeachment process.
This was stunning, and this was stunning in how rapidly it happened. Was it not, Jason?
As far as the shift for independence?
He's going to walk through this shift, but the dramatic shift in it just from the beginning of the televised hearings when the nation really came in to start to watch
and this ties directly back into the Trump focus groups, or the Trump super PAC focus groups.
That you brought up today, yep.
Right. We discussed in our previous episode where folks they're tired of it. They see it as a bunch of noise, and it really comes down to, if you didn't beat them at the ballot box, why are you doing this? You're wasting time. You're wasting money. Get back to some of the business at hand. And the other thing, too, is people, like normal people who have real jobs, who aren't total nerds like us getting into the weeds here, they're looking like, wait, it's too confusing. I mean, do you have anything on Trump or you don't? You don't? Then why are you doing this?
Right. What's in Ukraine?
Yeah, exactly. Opposition by independents to the House's ongoing impeachment inquiry jumped 10 points in the last week. Remember, that's after George Kent, after William Taylor, and after Marie Crybaby Yovanovitch.
That can't be Nancy Pelosi's high command cannot be looking at that number and think they're doing things correctly.
And Greg, tell us about the methodology here.
Yeah, so the accuracy on this is a lot better than recent polls that have come out, with close to 2,000 people sampled.
It's a big poll.
2% margin of error.
Yeah.
As opposed
2%.
to
The
6%, 5.8%.
They were 4.8%, 5% last night, right?
On yesterday. 500 person poll.
This is a bigger poll, 2%.
Yeah, this is a bigger, and this I can see from the crosstabs, and we'll throw a link up on our website after the show so people can go through it themselves.
That's at warroom.org?
Well, that is warroom.org. There's so much detail in this. They break down, and you can see that the boomer generation are far more opposed to this. You can see that Generation Z is broadly unplugged from this whole thing. You can see where the independent women are going to be more difficult for President Trump to reach.
Let's talk about that. How bad? What are the numbers here on that? Because that's been a cause of concern.
Well, so it's not all good news, this poll, right?
What's the bad news for the president?
Well, the bad news is people do en masse still support the process. They still want this. 48% still want this to go ahead. They want the House to actually impeach President Trump versus, I think, 42% that say they don't, and then the rest don't know.
Does that disturb you as a strategist, Jason, that this, and of course, we're still early into this of the country coming together, that number at 48% is disturbingly high?
Of course, but it's a surface number, and when you start drilling down, and this is a thing where I had the opportunity to have that conversation with the pollster doing some of these, once for these independent voters, and especially with the female voters, once they're able to get through their disagreement with President Trump on behavioral issues, they get past the mean tweets, they get the rest of the things that other people go and talk to them about.
How style,
then they love the policies.
Yeah.
They love what he's doing. And here's the other thing that was key that came through in those focus groups, and I didn't mention this in our previous episode. When people are asked, well, why do you think that these are mean tweets? Why do you think it's behavioral things? Because I see it in the media. And so this is all a big echo chamber.
Amplification.
And so as we move toward, and by the way, there's a breaking poll saying that Mayor Pete is now up 10 points in New Hampshire, a St. A's poll that just came out. So he's up in...
St. Anselm?
Yeah, so he's up. Wow. So he's up by 10 in Iowa, up by 10 in New Hampshire. But as this becomes a one-on-one matchup, voters start making their choices.
Democrats! Somebody ought to punch Mayor Pete. It's
coming.
He's got his starring moment right here, right?
And Raheem, do you have more to go through on the poll?
Just a little bit more, if you don't mind. While most people are supportive of the process, you also have a majority of people disapproving of the way House Democrats are running the process.
What do you mean by that?
That's an important pullout.
That's clearly had an impact on the independents, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's also clearly had an impact on Nancy Pelosi's narrative and the way that they're actually framing this thing. This poll was done 3 days ago, and you've already seen in the last 3 days the Democrat narrative shift again. But most people either somewhat disapprove or strongly disapprove of the way the House Democrats are running this thing. Now, the last thing I think think is interesting to pull out of this is that the impeachment inquiry, people say, a majority of people say, is far more important, separately, respectively, to both politicians and the media than it is to their everyday lives. They also say it's difficult to tell all the Washington investigations apart. But again, not all good news for the Republicans on this. Most people still have the belief that President Trump abused his power to influence the 2020 election, and most people do believe that the president used a foreign government to investigate his political rivals.
Give me that last number again. That's disturbing.
All right, I'll read it. Based on what you've seen, read, or heard, do you believe the Trump administration withheld military aid from Ukraine in order to pressure the country's government to investigate his political rivals in the United States? Yes, definitely is 33%. Yes, probably is 15%. No, probably not is 13%.
Well, that's the 48%.
And no, definitely not is 18%.
Well, that lines up with with the people want to go forward on the impeachment right now.
Yeah,
so how do you counter that as a strategist? How do you? It's paid media. You're going to have to do it since the entire apparatus of the mainstream media is bought into this. You're going to have to go pay.
Well, they're always bragging about how much money they've raised when they spend something.
Yeah, well, they're up spending it now, and I think that what they're going
and independent groups are too.
And independent groups are too, and what they want to go to is especially they're actually up in 37 districts. Yeah. But what they really want to go to is to show people it's a waste of time, waste of money. So when we come back after Thanksgiving, they want to have polling to show that it's hurting these members like Susie Lee and Chris Pappas.
And Raheem, you said something the other day, and this is where I think, if I can make an observation, I think you're wrong. I think in the independent group that put the spot up that you said is a little soft, I think it plays back to the Politico article today and where the independents are, in that they're showing them the opportunity cost. You don't need to get in these people's faces. These are not hardcore MAGA people. They're common sense Americans that are not really bought into both of this process, but they're making the case of they're spending so much time here. Other things that can help the country, make your life better, and make the country go forward are not being addressed. And maybe that's the softness.
Allow me to compromise with you.
Okay, fine.
I will buy it on certain issues. So there is an issues question here. Do you support or oppose the current impeachment inquiry into President Trump? And the people who are most opposed to it are people who have security concerns, and the people who are least opposed to it are people who are concerned about education, climate and energy, and women's issues.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking about reaching them on security concerns, if you're talking about reaching them on what the moderates are mostly concerned about,
well, I think I thought they're reaching them on economics and things like USMCA.
Certainly.
Listen, to make all this clear, we've had an interesting discussion. To make all this clear, you're going to have it up on the website. Yep. Go to the website. What Greg and the team and Raheem are going to do is deconstruct these polls and get down to it. I want to tee up tomorrow. We're going to be live tomorrow at 9 a.m. I think it's going to be at the start of Ambassador Sondland's thing. Let's make Ambassador Sondland famous right now.
Yep. All right. So I want to go through on Ambassador Sondland. So again, this is the U.S. ambassador to the EU.
Because tomorrow's game day.
Tomorrow's game day. This is what everything's coming to. He's the loud talker whose July 26th phone call is the outrage of town. He's already had to change his testimony once, but I want to really break down who this guy is. So what a lot of folks might not realize, or many of these politically appointed ambassadors, when I say many, like pretty much all of them, the reason why they get the spot, and this is for the Trump administration, the Obama administration, going back for as long as, going back to the founders, it's been buddies get appointed to different ambassadorships. But this whole subculture of ambassadorship hunters who basically go and donate to candidates who raise money for them, and all they want is to go and get an ambassadorship. So someone like Sondland, who, first of all, this guy was on board with Jeb Bush in the primary, Jeb and Jeb's super PAC, then he went on to Rubio, and then after Rubio, then he came on to Trump, and he's with Trump, but then he bails after the Khizr Khan blow up, disappears, takes his name off of an invite, says he wants nothing to do with Trump. Then he comes back in the transition and kicks in $1 million or to the inaugural committee, wants to be a part of it.
Post November 9th,
yes.
Post-victory.
So, but here, I want to drill down. So he's a hotelier. He grew up in Seattle, my hometown, though I haven't lived there in a bazillion years. Grew up in Seattle, but all of his businesses are in Portland. This is the type of guy this guy is. So he literally, it's clear that they live in Portland. His wife, he's on a film commission. He's on, board there.
He paid the Democrat governor to get on the film commission.
Yes, all of his license plates for his cars are in Portland, but he claims Seattle is his home, which, by the way, just for people who don't know, Seattle's about a 3-hour drive north of Portland, because Washington State has no state income tax. And so this is the kind of guy and people hate people like this who
Yep.
cheat the system. And so this is the kind of guy that Gordon Sondland is. Here's the thing that even Morrison has clowned on Sondland, saying that he was constantly trying to make it seem like he had better connections with the president than he really did. Sondland, I believe, is a dilettante. He's someone he's a pleaser. He's going to try to get to the best answer. He's basically
Demonstrate value.
He's trying to demonstrate value. He's an empty suit in search of a cocktail party. This is who is
Boy, you're really rolling hard.
Oh, this is, and you know what? I think both parties are going to go strong on this guy tomorrow, because here's what we're going to find, Steve and Raheem and Greg, producer Dan, everybody listening, that Gordon Sondland was out there full of puffery, trying to demonstrate value, he hears President Trump talk about cracking down on corruption or various things. He's taken upon himself to use his own language and do these things.
You think he was ahead of the wagon train here?
I think
the case you're making is that he's ahead of the wagon train.
This guy would screw up a one-car funeral. I don't say he's the head of any kind of train or anything. I think he's running around, taking little bits and pieces he's heard from people, and he's trying to
be a big shot.
He's trying to be a big shot. You know what he's going to end up doing? No one's ever going to take this guy's phone call again. And there's even been an article that came out.
And the reason he likes being a big shot is he got into when he with Zemersky, whatever. They take him in the room privately, say nobody else can come here. We just want to talk to you. So he's felt like a James Bond character.
Yeah, and even going to and here's the thing that I wish our guys had really jumped on. When you're talking about this lunch or this July 26th lunch that he has, and he's doing that. You can just tell that this guy was there wanting the other people at the table to hear parts of a conversation like, hey,
100%.
President Trump calls me.
Right.
Look at this. Wow, guys, hey, let me step away because this is President Trump.
And
he's pointing to his phone.
You heard from Holmes. Holmes is freaking out about the security methodology. You got to go through, everything that should be checked. Who's a professional. And this guy's sitting there basically in an open thing, letting them know that, hey, I got the president on the phone. It was very loud about the 5 times he had to be connected to the White House switchboard and all that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, look, there are even concerns, and again, we'll post this article on the website. There are even concerns that he might turn, or if he does, or he tries to push blame somewhere else, or try to weasel his way out of it for financial reasons. His hotels are taking absolute beating. His wife is a Democrat, and she said that she's admitted she fears an economic backlash because of everything that's going on. And so I think if I had one question to put to Gordon Sondland as things start going south on him tomorrow, say since this whole controversy has come up and there's been a call to boycott your businesses, are you doing this, or have any of your actions been motivated by the fact that you're trying to save your business empire?
We got to do that, and we're going to get more into this tomorrow on the 9 a.m. show. Real quickly, Morrison has outed Vindman as a leaker. I mean, Vindman's supposed to be a Boy Scout. Now they said he was a known leaker.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that's what Morrison has been saying in the past also, and I believe confirmed it today also. But Vindman was actually point blank asked about this in his testimony earlier today, and he said, I believe he said that is manifestly ridiculous or something like that.
Okay, so he denied it. I want to go to
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong and Marco Rubio, a historic thing, and we're going to ask the guys in the war room where we stand on this. If Jack and these guys can give us an update about. There's a live vote. Rubio's on the floor of the United States Senate right now, trying to pass a historic resolution. We're dealing with this revolt in Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that's passed the House by unanimous consent. It's
435 to 0.
And Senator Marco Rubio from Florida is doing an excellent job on this. He's the one who's been leading the charge. It's literally you have Rubio, you have McConnell, you have Schumer. So you have Rubio and Schumer. And there's a very good chance.
In a divided country, the one thing that brings us together is the anti-CCP in defense of these patriots in Hong Kong.
Right, and what this is going to do is protect to make sure that real Magnitsky-style sanctions are put on anyone who takes part in these extradition efforts that are going. This is what started all. When people are getting the extraditions here, it's going to require Commerce to produce a report about mainland China stealing sensitive technologies. It's going to make sure that presidents going.
And this goes back. There was a deal made. Margaret Thatcher started negotiating. It was agreed to in the early '90s. Transition went back in 1997. But that deal was then ratified essentially by the U.S. Senate. We had a thing that backed up that deal, that Hong Kong was going to have the rule of law and be independent as far as the law went. One country, two systems, up until, I think, 50 years hence, right? And what the Chinese Communist Party has done has gone in and taken away the freedoms and the rule of law from the Hong Kong people, and it's these millennials under 30 that are now using bows and arrows to fight off the PLA.
And Rubio's doing a great job. Senator Mike Braun, who we had on last week, he's a champion of this as
Yes.
well. So
and Schumer's on this, McConnell's on this, but Marco Rubio has really stood out on this thing of being a champion of this and forcing this through the
kudos
system.
to Marco for that.
Marco, this could be a historic night. We'll report more on this tomorrow morning. Okay, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller, Greg Manns on a special edition of War Room Impeachment, 19th November, year of our Lord 2019, episode 37. We'll be back live tomorrow. It's game day. Ambassador Sondland's up. It's 9 a.m. He'll be hitting the decks early. I think he's the only guy scheduled for tomorrow. It'll be huge tomorrow. Stephen K. Bannon here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, live from the Breitbart Embassy. We'll see you tomorrow morning.